I have a plea to you listening to this episode. A plea to immediately take it upon yourself, responsibility of addressing your own healing and your own health. Welcome back to the lab. I'm your host, Bryce Prescott, and I'm not easing into this one today. This is an important message. Today, we're going to talk about difference between naming your trauma or your wound or your experience and living inside of it. And why the second part, living inside of it, isn't just hurting you, it's hurting everyone close enough to you to catch the runoff. As most of you know, I'm no longer with my wife of 21 years. And since the separation, we've had our phases. One of those phases has been that the directness of our communication has gone up. And even in a few specific conversations, things turned mean, which I was actually surprised to see. I didn't think we would do that, but there's a lot of things about this experience that I didn't think would happen. And yet here we are. In those conversations, it turned mean and even in some cases became revisionist, where her and I were individually remembering things different than they actually happened. I'm hearing a version from her going, I don't recall that at all. And she's saying the same about my recollection. We were essentially rewriting the story with our own angle. Now, I want to be careful here because this isn't a finger-pointing exercise. I have no bitterness or guile that I want to specifically point to her. I'm not here to build a case against her, nor am I looking to build one for myself. I do want to give context because in this scenario, context is the entire lesson and the purpose of this episode. Here's what I can see clearly now. If I had handled my own shit earlier, if I had faced the things to which were in my face that were directly issues I was having with me, actually handled it, not just learned the language to describe it, gotten under the hood, really done the things needed, I wouldn't have shown up for her in her life in a way that triggered her to see me the way that she does now. And the same is true in reverse. If she has shown up differently for me in certain moments and some of the more terse or difficult times of our marriage and been different in her reactions and choices, it would have affected me in a different way. That would have had me seeing her different. 21 years is a long time to build patterns. It's long enough you stop noticing which behaviors are actually yours, which ones you picked up in response to, and which ones they picked up in response to you. It becomes this feedback loop that runs on autopilot. By the time you're sitting across from each other 20 years later, 2 decades later, having a hard conversation, you're not really responding to what that person is or who they are in that moment. You're responding to decades of accumulated residue. And this just isn't you. This is them responding to you as well. And as I've thought about this, what I've come to understand this, we all bleed on each other. It's just a part of life. And to keep going with that image for a second, because I think it is exactly the way this is, at a certain point, specific to me and my former spouse, we couldn't tell whose blood was on the floor. We were both bleeding on each other in such a way that when it came time to actually fix things, we didn't know where or how to start because of everything that was there together. We just knew there was a mess and we knew that it hurt. Somewhere in there, we just lost track of who was bleeding first, who was bleeding most, truthfully, because it stopped mattering. It all just mixed together. And that's what happens when two people carry unresolved wounds into proximity with each other for long enough. It's not that one person's the villain or one's the victim. It's that the unhealed things don't stay contained. They spread to whoever's closest. The closer somebody is to you, the more they love you, the more access they have to you, the more surface area they have for all of your unresolved nonsense to land on. Well, that's the cruel irony. People get hurt the most by our unhealed wounds, by our issue. People we hurt the most, that are affected the most by us, they're the ones who stayed closest. The people that cared the most are the ones we hurt the most because of our issue. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about why it's happening. Because there is an entire generation that is neck deep in this nonsense. And it's starting to bleed to everybody else too, ironically. It's not just me. It's not just you. We are living in one of the most psychologically literate eras that has ever existed. And I mean that with real appreciation, not sarcasm. We have language now that our parents never had. We have a way of describing things that makes us more easy to understand. Things like attachment styles, trauma responses, nervous system regulation. 50 years ago, people had no idea what that. They didn't have words for the things that were making it, why they were sabotaging their relationships. Now a 14-year-old on TikTok can tell you she's anxious attachment with bipolar disorder, maybe on the autism spectrum. They have a fear of abandonment and a rejection wound because of caregiving. They can spit all this stuff back to you. And that's genuinely remarkable access to insight, be able to know those things about yourself. My parents' generation, they didn't have any of that. They just called it being difficult or you're too sensitive. It was really unsophisticated the way that they dealt with these type of things, where now we have access to way more information. But here's what happened because of that access. And it's the whole crux of this episode. These frameworks were built originally as diagnostic tools. They were built to function like a map, something that tells you where you currently are so that you know which direction to move. A diagnosis exists to point to healing. That was always the entire purpose of naming the thing, the wound. You name it, you diagnose it, so you can treat it, so you can fix it, so you can heal from it. But what internet culture has done is turned diagnosis into identity. It's no longer, I have an anxious attachment. It's, I'm anxiously attached. It's a part of who they are. It stopped being a starting point and it started becoming a personality, a part of your identity, a profile bio, a permanent explanation instead of a temporary description. And once something becomes your identity instead of your diagnosis, you stop trying to change it, because changing it would mean changing who you are. And changing your identity is one of the most misunderstood things about this path we live as humans here in life. People defend their identity. And when something becomes that gives you something in return, like an excuse when you can say, I'm anxiously avoidant, we see the mess that it creates. You can watch this happen in real time on social media if you pay attention to it. Somebody posts a video explaining their attachment style. It gets thousands of comments. Almost none of them say, here's how I'm working on this. They say, this is so me. I feel so seen. I found my people. That's the interaction. Being seen has become the finish line instead of the starting line. We built an entire content economy around the dopamine hit of recognition and validation, and almost none of it points anywhere after that hits, after the recognition happens. Nobody's making the follow-up video about 6 months of unglamorous work it took to actually shift the pattern, because that video doesn't perform well. Gets no views. It's not very shareable. It's not exciting. I finally understand why I do this. We'll get 10 million views. But here's what I actually did to stop doing that. It's not as satisfying. Nobody gives a shit. Because now your excuses don't matter. This is trap. The tools themselves, they're not the problem. Whether it's attachment theory or trauma-informed language, nervous system work, all of it's genuinely useful when it's used the way it's designed to be used. The problem is we've started collecting diagnoses the way people used to collect merit badges, wearing them instead of using and calling it a form of healing. That because you have insight into something, it means you fixed it, when it's not at all. Awareness without action isn't healing. It's just a more sophisticated way of staying stuck. And it makes you feel a little better until it doesn't. And honestly, it might be worse than not knowing it all, because now you've got the language to sound like you've done the work, when all you've actually done is get better at describing it. Now, I want to walk you somewhere uncomfortable for, because I think if you've reached this far in the episode, that you need to see the whole road, not just the first steps. And you're probably identifying with how this might be a problem for you, or at least a problem you see in your own life with others around. Now, here's the truth, what I've shared. If you keep doing this, if you keep treating your wounds as your identity instead of your diagnosis, here's where it leads. It leads to a relationship that gets followed up with another relationship where you are absorbing the same unprocessed pattern and telling yourself it's just who you are instead of something you have the power to change. It's the same fight, just different people attached to it, depending on your relationship. And you start to think it's a compatibility problem in those moments, that you just keep picking the wrong people, when really you are the one common variable running the same unaddressed program every single time. A wise person once said, you take yourself with you wherever you go. And it leads to people slowly learning to manage you instead of love you, walking on eggshells around whatever particular flavor of your unhealed part is. Because engaging with you honestly costs too much. They start pre-editing what they can say to you. They start deciding certain topics aren't worth bringing up because of how you'll react. Here's the part that stinks. That's not closeness. That's the opposite of closeness. That's two people existing in the same space, while one of them quietly manages the other like a liability. It leads to isolation that you'll misread as other people's failures to understand you, when really it's just the natural result of nobody being able to get close without getting cut. And it leads eventually to exactly what I described in my ex. Two people so soaked in their own unaddressed pain that neither one of us could tell whose blood was on the floor. That's not a dramatic exaggeration. That's just what happens slowly over years, when both people mistake naming the wound, treating. Here's the part I need you to actually hear. This isn't me trying to make you feel like garbage. I hope it's opposite. I hope you're feeling empowered by what you're hearing. What got you here is not your fault. Nobody chooses their childhood. Nobody chooses the wiring they walked away with. Whatever happened to you that created the pattern in the first place, that part isn't on you. I'm not interested in blaming your wounds on you. You didn't ask for it. But the choice to fix it, 100% on you. That part is entirely yours. Every single day you spend treating your wound as a fixed identity instead of a solvable problem is a choice, whether it feels like one or not. And I want to be clear. I'm not saying this from some clean, healed mountaintop looking down at you. I'm in the same boat. I've bled on everybody that I loved for so long before I fully understood what I was doing. And then it was even worse when I learned the names and labels of what I was doing, because I thought that insight would excuse it away because it was knowledgeable, or I perceived to be like I knew what I was talking about, when the fact is I was still bleeding. And I know you're the same. We're just on different points of the same road. I need to say this next part very clearly, because I don't want this episode to be misheard as anti-therapy or anti-awareness, or it's the opposite. Naming your wound is not the problem. It's actually great to understand that. Going to therapy, learning your attachment style, understanding your trauma responses, none of that is what I'm warning you against. If anything, that's step one. You have to be able to understand your own behaviors and the attachment that those behaviors have to your beliefs and values and your identity. That part is good. Understanding that is good. It's genuinely necessary. You cannot heal what you cannot name. Step 1 of 100 is knowing what you're dealing with. If anything, I want more people doing that first step, not you. I'm not trying to talk anybody out of therapy or coaching or self-study or any of that. The plea that I began this episode with isn't stop learning about yourself. The plea is don't let step 1 become the finish line. It's not the final answer. It's just the beginning. Don't let I'm anxiously attached. I'm an avoidant. I have a trauma response. I have a rejection wound. Don't let these sentences become the thing that ends a conversation. The diagnosis was always supposed to be the opening line of a much longer story, not the whole book. Imagine going to a doctor, getting a diagnosis for a treatable condition, and then just framing it, the diagnosis, hanging it on the wall, introducing yourself with it at parties. Here you go. I am cancer. I am broken ankle. It doesn't matter if you don't do the treatment to get healed. And it's not actually your identity. It's just a crutch. That would sound insane if you did those things. Like, what are you talking about? You are cancer? Like, you're a lunatic. But yet, I am avoidantly attached doesn't sound like a lunatic. It's the same thing. We do exactly the same thing with our emotional, our relationship wounds, and somehow it's accepted as normal. Like, we're just supposed to, oh, yeah, I guess that is who you are, not what you're experiencing. So let's get concrete, because this plea doesn't do anything if there's not a practice or something to do to get you to that place. If anything, it just becomes guilt. Because as they say, when you know better, you do better. Well, as we're learning to know better, we got to do better. So here it is. Taking responsibility for your healing looks like this. It looks like noticing the pattern while it's happening, not just explaining it afterward. It's the difference between saying, I shut down because I have avoidant attachment after you've already gone cold on somebody for 3 days, versus catching the very first pull towards shutting down and naming it out loud in the moment. I feel myself wanting to disappear right now, and I don't want to do that to you. One of those is insight after the damage. The other is intervention before it. Notice the difference. It looks like doing the actual unglamorous work, the therapy session you didn't feel like going to, the somatic practice, the pause before you respond in anger, the apology that doesn't come with an explanation attached to soften it. Looks like treating your healing as a practice you do daily, not a fact about yourself that you disclose. And then you just consider it anger. It also looks like something a lot of people skip, which is going back to the people you've already bled on, actually naming it without using the diagnosis as a shield while you do it. It's actually the root of true accountability, is to be able to do that. Not, I did that because of my attachment style, so I hope you understand, just, I did that. It hurt you. I see it now. And I'm working on making sure it doesn't happen ever. That's the 3-part accountability framework that I've taught on this show before. It applies directly here. Acknowledge the act. Acknowledge the impact. Don't repeat it. Notice that I have an attachment style doesn't show up anywhere in those 3 parts. It might be true, and of course it might have led to the challenge, but it's not the point. And it looks like this. The next time you're about to let your wound explain away your impact on somebody else, stop and ask yourself this one question. Am I using this insight to change my behavior, or am I using it to excuse? Those 2 things can sound identical out loud and be worlds apart in practice. One of them ends in, and here's what I'm doing different. And the other one just ends. I'll tell you honestly, I'm not fully past this. Part of this episode is because I have some accountability to handle as well, people that I've let on. Or I've wanted an excuse for just being willing to say what my problems were while not actually doing the things necessary to fix them. There are still moments, even now, post-separation, where I catch myself reaching for the language of my own history to explain away something I did instead of owning it. It's genuinely hard to break that habit. Sometimes explaining feels like honest, like you're being transparent, that you're being self-aware. Sometimes it is those things. Sometimes it's just a fancier way of dancing around that problem that you created and trying to make it seem as if it wasn't as big of a deal. I've caught myself doing this in conversations with my ex, specifically recently. Instead of just apologizing or making amends, reaching for an explanation to a framework or an understanding, and then even in my hurt and blame, turning it around as if it was excusable when it wasn't. Explaining myself doesn't require the same vulnerability that a plain, unqualified "I was wrong" requires. But I'm trying to build in myself right now, real time. And again, as a finished product, I'm reporting back to you on, in the middle of this, is the ability to notice the difference between those two in the moment they're happening, not 3 days later in hindsight. And I'm not there yet, but I am closer than I was a year ago. I have not arrived, but I am in the direction. So that means in those moments, I get to, even if the timing is off, acknowledge where I was wrong, acknowledge where I've left because I wasn't healed right. And most importantly, live with the consequences. So again, my plea to you is this: take upon yourself the responsibility of addressing your own needs. Not eventually, not when things are better timed, now, immediate. Because every day you let your wound stand in or your responsibility, today somebody close to you inherits something from you they never agreed to carry. You didn't choose the wound. You get to choose whether you keep bleeding on people. If this landed for you, just have a request, ask. Please share this episode. If you saw this on a clip, share the clip. Follow me on my YouTube channel, my TikTok, Instagram. Let me help get these types of words and discourse into more ears by returning the favor of this free offering I give you as a podcaster, helping other people hear about it. So to adjourn, I remind you, my name is Bryce Prescott. You have been listening to The Lab. And like I always say, until next time, take it a day at a time.